Blessed day, beautiful people, and welcome to the space. I'm happy to have you all here. Today, we are going to talk about how embodied yogic philosophy can assist us in embodying the cultural change that our hearts really yearn for. I'm very excited. Things sort of unfolded very naturally. As we know, the theme for this month is food as medicine. And when I was working through the slideshow, I was thinking about how it is that I normally explain what we're going to talk about today. And it is through like the metaphor of seeds. And there are many reasons for that. And I'll explain why in the session. And so I'm just excited to offer this medicine, this nourishment, which I think is very critical for the times that we're living in today and the times that will continue to unfold. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let us begin. I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to just start this session with a little meditative storytelling experience. And this is important because we really are living in a story that is unfolding. And so I want to invite you guys, if it feels comfortable for you to close your eyes. If you're a visualizer, if you're someone who likes to visualize, you can try to visualize what I'm saying. But if you're like me and you're more felt-bodied experience, you can just tap into the felt sensation of this meditation. So you are standing in a golden field. Empty meadows directly in front of you. The sun is shining. You see a mountain along the horizon. And directly in your path, there's a fruitful tree, which is a promise that the fields that lie ahead are fertile, are ready to nurture and sustain life. But before you step forward onto this path, into this field, something calls you to look behind you. And at first, when you look behind you, you see all of your ancestors, all of the humans from the beginning of humanity to the most recent generation, who are the reason why it is that you, as you are here today. Perhaps you see some smiling faces. Perhaps you see some weathered faces. But what matters is that they're there. And as you expand your view of what lies behind you, you recognize that there are more than just your ancestors present, because there's more than just you in the field. You begin to recognize other people's ancestors as well. First, human ancestors. And then you recognize the larger web of life is also present. Every animal that has ever existed, every insect that has ever existed, every plant that has ever existed. And as you look at this web that is behind you, you begin to see where it has tangled, maybe some places where it has unfurled, and maybe some places as time passed where it has remained strong and solid and connected. So when you look back, what do you see? You see the seeds they have sown, the fruits they've borne, and suddenly you feel a weight in your hand, a weight that you never noticed before, and it feels quite heavy. And when you look down in your hand, you notice seeds. And suddenly you realize the responsibility that you have in relationship to all that has passed before us and all that continues after us. And once again, as you look out at the fertile expanse directly in front of you, you realize that you must now make the decision of what seeds you wish to sow. And so whenever you folks are ready, we can let that storytelling meditative experience ground and come back to here, to now, to the space. And I'm going to just give you a quick introduction to myself before it is that we dive in. My name is Sydney Searchwell-Simpson. I'm a first and foremost devotee and lover of life. That's the foundation of all that I do and all that I am on this planet. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a student of history, healer, permaculture practitioner, yogi, and founder of Jivanmukta Healing. I am all of these things and none of these things. These are just the things that I do in this world that are relevant to today. And I share all of this with you, and I'm about to jump into a whole nother story. And this is the story of how it is the natural unfoldment of my life guided me to the understanding of domination consciousness that I'll be sharing with you today. So when I was a kid, I was very, very passionate about social justice, and I found myself being so inspired about the movements for liberation that I was learning about in school and I was reading about in the books in my library, the movement for women's liberation in the 60s, the movement for Black liberation within the 60s as well. And learning about these movements and the cultural change that they created, that I was, I was holding that legacy. I was incredibly inspired. Someone might be in the waiting room.
I didn't see anybody pop up.
I didn't see anyone pop up either, but thanks for bringing that to our awareness, Sen. I found myself, oh, there we go. I found myself feeling incredibly inspired and empowered by what I was learning about our history. And this was done in great contrast to the daily life I was living within my home. Because when I left school, I would go home, and I would go home to the man that my mom became financially dependent on when I was 8 years old, who was financially abusive, physically, emotionally, mentally, verbally abusive. And he was also an alcoholic. And every night when he would go into his alcoholic stupors, he would express the very violent white supremacist beliefs through those forms against myself and against my family. And I felt this great conflict. I felt very confused. Why is it that the calls for justice that have been lived in fully back then, why could that, and why was it not changing what wasn't unfolding in my home? And when I was around 10 years old, I had a very profound recognition that laws, no matter how much power they hold within the political sphere, cannot change what's unfolding in our homes. It cannot change what unfolds in our day-to-day relationships with one another, because these systems, white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, colonization, they might be external systems, but they're maintained by our relationships with one another. So, systems of domination, as I mentioned, are maintained by the internalized conditioning that recreates and reinforces traumatic patterns in our relationships. So these relationships begin within. The trauma of domination ruptures first our inner world, our inner realm. And when that is ruptured, it ripples out into our relationship with other humans, our relationship with the beyond human world, including our plant, animal, insect kin. It ruptures our relationship with the earth, that is our home. And on a larger scale, it ruptures our relationship, our capacity to know and experience ourselves as life. So these symptoms, these external structures, I really see as the symptoms of a larger disease. It's not the root. And I feel like the moment that we are living in right now is asking for us to do the work that maybe in the past they did not have the capacity to do. And that's the uprooting, working beyond just the symptoms, but actually doing the internal work so that we can begin to plant new seeds for future generation of life. So one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, and this is where yoga comes in, is that these patterns, these relational patterns, they veil the truth of who it is that we truly are, and also that same truth that exists within all beings. So when we look at to our right here, this relational field, this is important. I'm going to keep pointing to it over and over and over and over again. These systems have attempted, but they've never had the power to actually eliminate this relational field. That's not within their grasp. But they have come dangerously close to disconnecting humanity's attunement to that relational field. And it's that attunement to that relational field that tends to the health of that relational field. So as I mentioned before we began, I love and I constantly use the fruit seed metaphor because I think it's a very powerful metaphor. It's a powerful metaphor for us to understand karma, and karma beyond how domination consciousness projects, like what it projects onto it. Karma as good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. Karma in its most basic form is just cause and effect. And sometimes the most terrible things can be the fertile soil for the most beautiful things to unfold. And sometimes the things that we think are the most beautiful things can lead to very heartbreaking things. So it invites us to expand into understanding it's just cause and effect. I think seed and fruit metaphors are also very powerful to help us understand the living world around us and the living world that we're a part of. And then also as a permaculture practitioner, it just comes naturally. And so we essentially are the fruits, and the fruits are the legacy of all that has come before us. We are the fruits, but we also hold the seeds, and the seeds are the container of creative potential of all that will come after us. But these seeds have inherited a disease. And this disease is domination consciousness. Again, the internalized conditioning, the traumatic web of beliefs, values, identities, narratives, relational patterns, and worldviews that are shaped within and recreate the relational ruptures that are necessary to sustain the external systems of domination. There are two words I'm going to really focus on within this space. It's really important that people have an understanding of it. And the first is disease, the domination consciousness, which we all hold within us because we've been conditioned under these systems, adapts to us and we adapt to it. And when we think about disease and we think about healing of disease, disease is something that happens inside of us, right? And a thing that I really encourage more people to reflect on as we meet this moment as it is today, but also what will continue to unfold, is what happens inside of someone under these systems. What happens to people under the falsehood of white supremacy? What happens to people under the falsehood of patriarchy? And not just those who are oppressed under it, but what happens also inside the people who have been conditioned to believe that they benefit from it. And so some couple guiding questions for people to sit with too. What happens inside of oneself when you are generationally taught and told that your worthiness and your value is dependent on the oppression of others? What happens inside of oneself when you and people who look like you have been murdered and violated and dehumanized simply because of the complexion of your skin? And what happens inside of oneself when you are conditioned to see the natural world, the living world around you, as something to be exploited rather than a living, loving being, our home? And we're living in what happens when those things remain unhealed and unprocessed. And so to heal and to live in freedom, we have to get to the source, the deep, deep source. The second word I want us to pay attention to is that this, the trauma, the traumatic web of beliefs. And this is because trauma Trauma is rupture. Trauma is severance, and it's severance that occurs within the individual. It's severance that occurs within a collective, and it's also severance that lives within our shared history. I think one of the actually, I'll give you the definition first. Gabor Mate, who's just an amazing psychologist who does great work on trauma, he defines trauma as an inner injury, a lasting rupture or split within the self due to difficult or hurtful events. By this definition, trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside of you. And this, what happens inside of you, is what remains unhealed and unprocessed. And this is where the disease begins to flourish. It flourishes within our vrittis, which within the yogic philosophy is called mental conditioning. But in the work that I do, I explore how it's deeper than simply mental conditioning. A very easy way that I can give you an example, it's a great example to highlight how the rupture within one, the inner self, can resonate and radiate out into all of our other relational fields, and that's colonization. It's probably the most concrete example that I can offer that shows you that relationship, because you had to rupture a people, a single person, disconnect them from the truth that they know themselves to be, disconnect and rupture their relationship with other humans, their relationship with the land, with the earth, and their understanding of their place within the larger realm of life. So this rupture within, as I mentioned, within yogic philosophy, it lives within the vrittis, the mental conditioning, but it also lives within our emotional body, our larger spiritual body, our physical body, and it's also deeply subconscious. And because it exists within all of these bodies, what happens with trauma is a rupture, it's a severance, it's a sense of, I'm unsafe. What we're going to do as a wise response is to try to rebalance and reestablish safety however it is that we can. And this rebalancing, this reestablishing safety has often looked like compliance with the myths that domination consciousness needs us to believe about ourselves, about other people, about life, and about the earth that we are a part of. So these strategies for safety, they bleed into our culture because of the fact that we embody it within those koshas, within all of our bodies. And for us to just really understand this, we're gonna do a little observation exercise that requires us to drop into observation, drop into presence within our bodies. And I'm gonna ask you 2 questions. And then if folks feel inspired to share after what unfolded and emerged within them, I happily welcome that. So taking a moment just to breathe, and really, really feel our energy fully present in our body in this moment. And now, I want you to begin to observe what happens in your thoughts and your emotions energetically in your body when you imagine yourself entering a room filled with white-bodied men. Just observing what happens naturally. And on our next inhale, we're just going to clear that energy to prepare us for the next observation question. So whenever you're ready, connected to your awareness in body and mind and spirit, I want you to imagine or feel yourself being challenged by someone that is culturally deemed less than you. This could be someone of a certain race, someone of a certain gender. This could be children. This could be employees. Just noticing what happens inside your being when you imagine yourself being challenged by someone who culturally you've been taught is less than you. And when you're ready, we'll just clear that energy. I would love to take a minute to open up space if anybody would like to share what they observed, what they noticed for either of those questions.
I would love to share. So yesterday I went to a temazcal and then a cacao ceremony. In the temazcal, there wasn't very many brown bodies, but there was a cultural embodiment of ticos, which are Costa Rican locals. And so I felt very comfortable, very accepted. And then when I went to the cacao ceremony, the first thing I noticed was two white women. One, I believe, was like Russian, and the other one was just like, you know, and we were in the cacao ceremony. My heart was already open from the temazcal, and I see this woman, and then I start to feel my heart clench a bit. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, and I'm like, why? Like, no, relax, open. And I really had to really do some yoga with my heart in order to be comfortable. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, when you brought up this exercise and you said, like, imagine yourself in a room full of white men, I felt that shrinkage. Mm-hmm. And then I had to breathe through it in order to open and feel confident in this room. But yeah, it was very eye-opening. And I just love the synchronicity with what happened yesterday into this meditation. So thank you so much for sharing it.
Mm. Thank you for sharing such a real, resonant, and embodied experience that I think is fairly common. Yeah, and I find it can be very easy to sort of like, I've done this in the past, to sort of like shame myself for sometimes feeling that contraction. But there's a part I've had to come to accept. What is this contraction trying to show me? Because it's deeper than you. It's deeper than just you and your experience. Because remember, the trauma, or when we're in a traumatic situation, which historically Black and brown people have been with white-bodied people for a very long time, our bodies develop safety strategies. And part of that safety strategy was to contract our hearts. It was because that was safety. So I've had to sort of be like, okay, my heart's contracted. But then now hopefully it opens you up to exploring that. I love that you tapped into the yogic practice for that. Would anybody else like to share?
Hello.
Hi.
From the video. Hello. Okay. I can share. Hi, everybody. My name is Jay. You mentioned safety, and I wanted to say that for me, like the like first thing that comes to mind is like my shoulders get like tight and like start to rise, and I feel like a lot of times well, from like previous jobs, I've worked a lot with white men and women, and I feel like I automatically I go into protection mode, as if like I have to like protect myself like right away, like nothing has even happened yet. And I feel like it's a way of like keeping my like mind, heart, and body like safe. So yeah, like thinking about it, I just like first I was sitting like this, and then like immediately I just like my shoulders started like curving and like going up, and then I had to like drop them back down and tell myself like I'm safe. So that was one of the first things that came to mind for me.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that, Jay. Yeah. It's amazing the information that we become available to when we meet what's happening with just an awareness of, oh, okay. And I love how you were able to practice like, oh, actually, I'm going to drop back into safety as I showed up inherently. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is where the work comes in. Like, I'm really here on this planet right now to assist humanity with uprooting this stuff from within, simply because we cannot plant what we do not carry within us. And to me, that is the true revolutionary, truly healing, transformative, liberating work that this moment is inviting us into. So, yoga. If trauma is the rupture that causes disharmony through our relational field, yoga is what creates the conditions for union, for relational wholeness through the recognition and embodiment of our shared true nature. So yoga for me is about recognizing, experiencing, and living in or expressing one's true nature that is innately within union or in relational wholeness with all that is. That is the lie that systems, I mean, that's the truth, that systems of domination rely upon in order to maintain itself. So with this knowing, when I look at history, and I see how the call for liberation that have just been happening over and over and over and all around the world at different times are really a call for and from our true nature to be expressed. Our true nature is inherently free. It's free from the conditioning that allows systems of domination to live, whether that is the call for liberation from the Haitian Revolution, or the call for liberation from the freedom fighters in South Africa fighting against apartheid, or the call for liberation unfolding today with Iranian citizens challenging their oppressive regime. Something deeper is yearning and knows that what we're living in is not a reflection of truth. And so how is it that we as yogis come to embody that truth, even if the world around us refuses to acknowledge it? So embodied yogic philosophy helps us experientially know and realize this truth that we are. And that's the truth that we are beyond domination. And to me, that domination consciousness, this disease that we've inherited, is honestly the greatest threat to our individual and collective spiritual evolution. We're going to take a minute to go back to vrittis. As I mentioned, this conditioning doesn't just exist within the mental realm. Y'all mentioned yourself through your stories. It's deeply embodied. It can be very heavily subconscious. It exists energetically. So, and this happens not just within the individual, but on a larger collective scale. So what yoga helps us do, embodied yogic philosophy, embodied yogic practice helps us do, is first observe the conditioning. When we become aware of what our conditioning is, how we have learned to survive within systems and worldviews that do not honor the life within us or anywhere else, we are able to begin to access our power, because nothing can be done without awareness. So that's step one. Yoga helps us observe the conditioning. Step two, yoga helps us disidentify / detach from this conditioning, and not in a way that's spiritual bypassy, not in a way that's like, I'm love and light and nothing can touch me, but from a deep understanding I can observe my emotions. I can observe my thoughts. I can observe the sensations in my body, but what it is that I observe is not necessarily who it is that I am. These are valuable, unbelievably valuable resources for us to navigate and live in this world, but they are not who it is that we are. And this is really important because whether or not I'm doing this work and helping white folks disidentify with the conditioning that they've inherited from white supremacy, or helping women of color disidentify from the lies that they've been told from that same system, it helps us really move beyond shame, because shame is going to come up as we do this work. But if you're able to realize, and if you're able to realize that what it is that you might have done, or what it is that we might have inherited, or a certain thought, maybe a thought that is kind of racist, maybe a thought that is kind of transphobic comes up, you're not shaming yourself, because when we shame ourselves, we hide that aspect of us. And when that part is hidden, it can never be healed. So there's a really power that comes from being able to observe what is from a point of power, from a point of non-judgment, because then we can be accountable and responsible towards our emotions, our thoughts, our body, and all that exists within it. It also helps us process this conditioning. This processing is where the healing actually happens. You cannot heal what you do not, like what you don't allow to be revealed. You cannot process what you do not allow to be revealed to yourself. And we have to process this conditioning, not just mentally, but somatically, energetically, emotionally, intellectually, relationally. And this is work that is going to take generations. But what really matters is that we are taking that first step. We're just taking that first step into understanding and observing how it is that I've been conditioned to be in this world, how I've been conditioned to relate in this world. Processing that, so then you can do the final step, which is clearing the conditioning. This happens naturally through the process, but it is propelled by intentional practice, intentionally being willing to continue to observe, disidentify, process, and to be able and to make that conscious decision of, I'm going to embody truth, even in a world that has maybe denied that truth existing within me, or continues to deny that truth existing in all else. I'm going to embody truth, and that's our power. And when I think about this as a composting process. We sort of like take the scraps, here's what's left, here's what we're sort of sitting with. And it takes time. Compost is such a beautiful process that really is just like time unfolding, which is really cool. To just like break it apart and chew it down, and just like the worms are digesting it, their enzymes are involved. And suddenly what's left is this fertile, just like life-giving soil. And it's that we plant new seeds in, but that has to be created through our processing of the conditioning. And here's a great example. I'm going to bring up another example. One of the most harmful legacies of colonization, of enslavement especially, is the legacy of colorism. It's a legacy of caste, and it exists within the African diaspora. It exists within the South Asian diaspora as well. And as I mentioned before, it causes this rupture within oneself, how one perceives oneself in this world, how one perceives oneself in relationship to other humans in this world. And as everybody can tell, I exist within a lighter skinned Black body. My family's Jamaican. We have a large variety of skin colors within my family because of our history. And it was fascinating because when I was a kid, I was raised within a space, my schooling up until I was in high school, I was with pretty much all other Jamaican or Caribbean folks. But there was often a question of, are you Black or are you like mixed race? Like, what are you? Some people would automatically ask, like, which one of your parents are white? And they'd have to deal with the fact that like none of them are white. And I found that when I went to high school, which then became a largely white environment, I found that some people would be asking me that exact same question: which one of your parents is white? And I'd give them the same answer, and they'd be navigating that. And I remember there was a point that came after I noticed I would get this question often, where I was like, nothing about the truth of who it is that I am has changed, but people are constantly trying to sort of like, who are you? And I realized over time this, and it happens, it's set on such a subtle level, again, deeply subconscious and subtle energetically, is that people who, again, establish relational safety to sort of affirm the worldview in which our identity, whether that's as a white person or as a Black person, has to be established within a system, are trying to navigate. For white folks, I found it was more, how close are you to me? How close are you to who it is that I am, who it is that I've been conditionally trained to be? And I found whenever I received that question from Black folks, it was more, how close are you to them? So then they can navigate their own sense of safety, where historically people who look like white people, and then eventually, in order to continue the sort of violence of white supremacy, taking people who looked closer to white people to use them to further oppress people who didn't look like white people, darker skinned people. So this subtle relational energetic dynamic that unfolds is sort of like a, tell me who it is that you are, so I know how to be in relationship with you based on a conditioned relational pattern that we've established in order to survive. And the most painful aspect of this, beyond even just myself, who in many ways is not on the oppressed end of colorism, is that this stuff, whether it is colorism, or whether it is patriarchy, or whether it is any other system of oppression, is that it robs us of the freedom of being who it is that we are. Because as mentioned before, there's a sense of, I almost have to defend my right to be here. I have to defend the fact that I have dignity, because I live in a world that has not honored that at all. And that doesn't give us the freedom to be who it is that we are. That's the thing that these systems have robbed us from. And so this work that we're inviting, we're all building in some way, shape, or form, and that we're exploring right now in this session, is to really step into who it is that I am. Who have I always been before? And this is sort of a guiding question that I'll invite folks to sort of, sit with and reflect on, is who were you before the world told you who you were? And who were you before the world told you who you had to be, and what that meant in relationship to other people? This is a good question to just like open things up. I've found a lot of freedom in this question, and I offer it in hopes that people can find freedom in it as well. So, when we do this work, we're not just eliminating the consciousness of domination, the internalized conditioning, but what we are doing is stepping into being available to embodying what emerges when we are no longer bound by the internalized conditioning of domination consciousness. So these systems, this consciousness, depend upon the suppression of truth, basic truth, the truth that we are one, the truth that we are life, and the truth that all of life is sacred, and all of life deserves to live in ways that are dignified. And these are not woo-woo ideal fantasies, but these are facts as valid and as real as the fact that our bodies need oxygen to breathe. So when we accept these facts, when we embody these facts, it aids in our healing and liberation and the expression of a new culture grounded in reality. And that is reality. We are one, we are life, and we are all deserving of dignified livelihood simply for the fact that we are here. And we don't need to do anything to prove that. And so when we free ourselves from the conditioning, aka uproot the disease, and begin to embody something new in our relationships, plant new seeds, we become living empowered examples of another way of living, loving, and relating that can restore our health and the health of the generations to come. And that's when we bear new fruit because we've planted new seeds. As mentioned earlier, I'm the founder of Jivanmukta Healing, and within yogic philosophy, Jivanmukta means liberated while living. And the best part about being liberated while living is that we get to serve. We get to serve the world in a way that can invite other people into becoming liberated while living. And I think the greatest service we can do, and this is why I walk this path, is our embodiment of truth. And that leads us to the step of cultural change. Cultural change. So root change begins within, but it spreads and changes through relational work. I think this is where the big gap that unfolded with like the great movements that were happening within the 60s and 70s, yes, within larger political social spheres, but even within spiritual spheres, is that many people were like, I'm enlightened, but that enlightenment didn't show up in how it is that they relate to day-to-day people. And I don't know, that's just what it is. But cultural change to me really restores the health and harmony within and between our relations. That's the cultural change I'm directing my life energy towards. So laws, institutions, political decisions, infrastructure, and the injustices that live within these realms have not always been in the hands of the masses because of how easily it is for people in power to manipulate who it is gets access to those realms. But culture always has. Culture always has and always will rest in the hands of the people. And the beautiful thing about culture is that it holds all. It's not separating politics from society, from economics, but culture holds everything. So with enough people embodying and relationally practicing this new culture beyond the conditioning, that will bring about the change that we seek. And how? Because the motives of domination that live in our conditioning cannot move through our awareness-informed free will. And that is our power. And here's a very easy example. Both of these men, we have inherited a world that has been unquestionably marked by both of these people, Adolf Hitler and Martin Luther King Jr. But it took more than one person. It took more than just these individuals to build the legacy that we've inherited from them. It took people who were willing to inform culture by letting something move through them via their values, their beliefs, their identity, their relationships, their worldview, their capacity to create, and their freedom to act. So when we look at this, I'm gonna wait for the truck to pass because I'm not sure if y'all can hear me. So when we look at that, when we really allow that to drop into our understanding, and we think about where it is that we are currently placed today, where we're witnessing ICE agents do unspeakable things to folks that they deem are not allowed to be in America, when we're witnessing big tech CEOs profiting from the climate crisis, when we're witnessing tyrannical politicians become more and more bold in how it is that they project their desires onto the collective, what really distinguishes us from them? It's not because we are good and they are bad. It's something a lot deeper. So what really distinguishes us from the people who are doing that is the depths in which we are available to be fruits that replant the diseased seeds, the internalized conditioning of domination. So it can tempt you, it can seduce you, but it cannot move through your awareness-informed free will. That's our power. We never have and we never will have power or control over what others choose to do. But what we do have is control over what we choose to do. And we have to remember this now, for what's unfolding today, but then also for the times that are to come. It will keep us resourced to meet the moment with love. So as mentioned, we're trying to restore our relational health. That's the cultural change that I know I'm trying to step into, the relational health within the inner self, the human realm, the beyond human realm, the earth realm, and the life realm. And restoring health is not just about the absence of disease, but the presence of harmony amongst diverse components of any given system. So liberation requires embodied non-compliance with the mental, embodied, relational, subconscious, internalized conditioning that we've inherited from systems of domination. So embodied non-compliance is not just I won't do, but it is I will do. It's a direction. I won't do violence, but what I will do is tell the truth, is speak the truth, is live the truth, is tend for life. So when we are working and walking towards something, we are becoming available to diverse imaginations, diverse insights, diverse ideas that can help reflect and amplify the truth that exists within all aspects of life. And from that point, we can begin to exist in collaborative harmony. That's what life wants. That's how life has evolved up to this point, is through collaborative harmony. And these are the new seeds that we can plant, but it requires the processing of compost of the generations of rupture within our relational field. And one of my favorite ways to really express just how much an individual choosing to embody something new can impact culture is through the 100th monkey effect. So essentially, in the 1950s, there were some researchers in Japan who observed that a singular monkey decided to wash sweet potatoes in the ocean before eating the sweet potato. And the monkey was like, this is great. I like this. This kind of works. I started to share it with some of the other monkeys. Some monkeys didn't care for it. They continued with their routine. They liked what was established. They did their thing. But then others who decided to try what this monkey did found that it had benefits, and they wanted to continue to do that. Eventually, through that natural sort of sharing process, washing sweet potatoes in the ocean reached critical mass. It reached a tipping point where that was no longer just something new that people were doing, but was actually something that more and more people would inevitably begin to do. And this is when exponential change becomes inevitable. What's really cool about this is that on that island in Japan, where one singular monkey decided to wash a sweet potato in the ocean before eating it, that spread throughout that island, but then it eventually began to spread across the neighboring islands as well, which is so fantastic when you think about that. And this was via the practice, the embodiment of something new. Because somebody chose to embody something new and people decided, I'm going to try this, I'm going to test it out, a whole new culture was formed. So critical mass creates exponential cultural shifts. And what's really great is that this monkey didn't, hold a speech and say, hey, you do what it is that I do. They weren't speaking, they weren't sharing and fighting opinions or fighting over who was right. The monkey just walked forward in a way that it knew worked for them. It shared resources, it observed and it modeled behavior. It moved forward towards something in a shared field, and enough people, enough monkeys, enough living beings decided, oh, right, we're carrying this forward. And that was that. And what's beautiful about that is that it honored choice. It honored freedom, because the fact of the matter is that we cannot build a free culture by controlling the freedom of others. And it's a painful reality to accept, because we see that some people in this world do choose to use their freedom for violence, for exploitation. But we are choosing to do something different. What I also love about this is that it really shows that we don't need everyone. So we get to spend a whole lot less energy trying to convince people who are very intent on continuing violence, exploitation, who are continuing to make the choice to live in lies. That's fine, do your thing. But we don't necessarily need you to walk forward in the path that we are choosing to walk. We don't need everyone to reach critical mass. We just need enough people. We need enough people who choose in freedom to become another way beyond the conditioning that we've inherited from systems of domination and its consciousness, and who are willing to, again, model that in their behavior, share the skills, tools, and resources that they have developed from walking that path, and to keep moving forward no matter what. One of the healers that I used to do work with always told me, Sydney, do what you can where you are with the resources that you have available to you. And what I love about this is that it really depends on nothing but authenticity. It's really important, I think, for people right now to get really clear about what their role is, what excites them. You can change the culture as a stay-at-home mom. You can change the culture as a teacher. You can change the culture as an activist marching in the streets. You can change the culture as an artist. You can change the culture as a monk. There are no limitations to who can change the culture. But what really matters is that we understand that it starts with us. It starts with us, and then it ripples out. It ripples out and it ripples in. It's a really cool relationship there. And so this is the work that we do with Jivanmukta Healing. It's helping people build their capacity to do this work in an empowered and embodied way that affirms the power and freedom of all, even in those who choose differently. We need more people who feel empowered to walk another way. We really, really do. So I'm in the business of supporting the embodiment of more Jivanmuktas, more people who are committed to embodied non-compliance in thought, in word, in deed, with ways of knowing, living, loving, and relating that are not conducive to the presence of love, that are not conducive to the continuance of life, and that are not conducive to the freedom innate in all that is. And I love this work because it's work that evolves and liberates both the individual and the collective consciousness. So if I were to just sort of summarize what to do, and you can find more resources on my website, and just, you can DM me. I'm here for conversations. I'm here for people who also want to walk forward with this and whatever expands upon this, because this is not the only way. It's just a way that I've discovered from walking my own path sincerely. Uproot the disease. Observe, name, identify, and challenge and process the conditioning for what it is, where it is. And this is a very important step, to not comply where it is convenient. In some way, shape, or form, we have all had some sort of privilege from systems of domination. And there might come a time where it might be like, ooh, am I going to let go of that? Like, am I really going to let go of this? You have to become very integrous and unconditional to walk this path of freedom. Another step, become a vessel. As you let go, open up and become available to life-affirming values, beliefs, identities, narratives, actions, worldviews, to move through in the direction of truth, in the direction of love, in the direction of life, in the direction of what it is that you are for. Next step, plant new seeds. When you have that understanding of what it is that you are for, and it might evolve and change as you keep moving forward, plant those seeds in thought, in word, and deed, unconditionally and to the best of your capacity. Your capacity is your power. It's so important that we build our capacity individually and collectively, wherever you go and whatever situation you face. And the final step, and this is a step we return to over and over and over, is to commit to it. Commit to it, share it, live it, be it. Cultural change is inevitable with enough people doing this. It is so inevitable. So y'all, that was a lot of energy, but it's okay. I want us now to close this session. We're going to return to the meditative storytelling experience that we began this session with, because the field has more to show us now that we know more, that now that we have access to more resources. So whenever you're ready, you can close your eyes, you can visualize, or you can just feel this experience. We're going to return to the field. We had just witnessed all that lived behind us, the whole of it, the trauma, the beauty, all of it. Those who fought for freedom are there, and those that created the conditions for that fight to live in are also there. We're able to feel where it is that we are in this present moment with a new perspective, maybe understanding, maybe compassion, maybe gratitude for those who walked as far as they could with the resources that they had. And here we can find an empowered acceptance of the past. In your hand, once again, you see the seeds that you carry today. And perhaps they don't feel as heavy as they did before. You see the seeds from that which you inherited. And again, looking ahead of you is nothing but open, fertile field. We walk in a timeless marathon that asks us to realize and remember truth at the core of all that is. And the baton is now in our hands. So when we look ahead at the horizon, nothing but empty open field, we also have an awareness that one day our descendants, our children, our nephews, our nieces, future generations of life will stand as we are standing today. There's nowhere to go but forward. So, what do we choose to plant? What seeds do we choose to sow? As you walk forward, I pray that you remember that you are simply clearing a way so that when others choose, and they may not, and they may, they have an example. They have a path from which they can expand upon. So then eventually this field is filled with nothing but seeds and plants that affirm the truth that we are all intrinsically connected to. And as we walk ahead, we also make room for new seeds to grow and prosper. So folks, as we return to this room, to this body, to this space, to this present moment that we are living in, my prayer is that you feel more empowered, more energized, more ready to meet this moment where it is that you are with the resources that you have available to you, because cultural change always has and always will rest in the hands and the hearts of the people. So what seeds will you choose to carry in yours? Embody truth, change the culture. This is the slogan of the work. This is the slogan of my life, of my attempt to keep walking forward, even when I don't get it right, because there is no right to get. There's just the need to walk forward. So if you want to join the movement, explore how it is that we can work together with individual offerings, collective offerings, to receive art that has been created, join the movement at this website, jivanmuktahealing.com. And also our Instagram and YouTube. And I'm just so excited to serve in this way and to walk this path, because this offering is a fruit of the path that life instilled in me. And that's that, people. We're slightly over time, but I'm happy to hold space if people have any questions or any comments, anything that is alive and real. Aw, yay. That's the intention. Our souls have been incredibly malnourished in the ways of this world. So I'm happy that folks are feeling nourished and fed. That touches my heart. Blessings. You're all so welcome. And I just pray that you carry this medicine forward wherever it is that you are. Thank you. And if that is everything, we'll close this space and circle.